Hello and welcome to Student Connections. I'm Logan Wright, and joining me today is our special guest, Dr. Ajay Krishan. Dr. Krishan is a cardiologist, and today we're going to discuss a new heart screening coming to Marysville in August. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Krishan.
Thank you. Thank you, Logan.
Would you please explain how and why you got involved in the screening program?
Well, I've been here since 2004 in this community, and I've waited for this opportunity since then. As a cardiologist, I wear two hats. One is as a cardiologist, and the other is as an electrical cardiologist, which we call electrophysiologists. And the screening that we're going to do is basically looking for electrical problems in teenagers. So it's something that I do for a living and on a daily basis. And so it kind of makes sense that not only me, but every electrophysiologist should be doing this in their community. And since we work at Port Huron Hospital in McLaren, through their foundation, I think it made sense to team up with them and come up to the schools.
Sounds like it was a long-awaited process starting in 2004, but that's a great thing you're doing.
Thank you.
Why is it important to have a cardiac screening as opposed to what we've been doing so far, like a sports physical?
Well, I think both are important, but you must understand that in a sports physical, it's a very broad scope. So you're looking at a lot of things, and you may not be able to focus on some very, very important issues. And what a cardiac screen does is specifically, it focuses on death in athletes, death during exercise. And for that, you have to be really specific, you have to focus in, and when we go over the questionnaires and we go over the examination, what we actually do, it's designed and focused specifically on that. And a sports physical may not have the opportunity because it does so much. So that's why it is important.
Like the screening does give you a better insight in what everything is and how everything works and
Yes.
what could go wrong.
Yes.
Why not leave the more detailed heart screenings for college athletes?
That's a good question, and I really want to focus on this. Approximately 75 to 100 athletes die in the US per year. Now that figure is probably an underestimate. And the way we derive those figures is by newspaper articles. There is no registry, there is no mandate that this must be reported. So we really don't know the figures. But if we assume that it's approximately 75 to 100, 65% of those deaths occur in high school. So if we wait till college, or if we wait for the elite athletes, we have missed 65% or more of the youngsters and the teenagers who are going to die.
That's a big jump going to 65%
Yes.
in high school athletes. So exactly what is the goal of the heart screening in high school teens?
Well, the goal in the Hearts In is to identify conditions. There are some very specific conditions that do it. There are about 5 or 6. That's all we are looking for. We're looking for a very specific number of conditions. And that's why it's so focused as opposed to just a sports screen. And all these conditions, what they have in common is they are genetic and inherited. There are some people who have it, not all. It's very important to understand that you may have this condition and you may never actually have a bad event. But some in this condition are at risk of premature sudden death, mostly with exercise, all right, but sometimes at rest. And so the goal is to pick up these individuals who have these specific conditions. That's really the focus. The focus is to pick up these 5 or 6 specific conditions that increase the risk of youngsters dying suddenly, mostly during sports, but even it could be you could be running casually. I remember, I think it was in 2005 or 2006, it was a Marysville student who had one of these conditions, and there's a video of that condition here. He was jogging. He went for a casual evening jog. He never made it.
That's a tragedy that we
That
don't
is a
really
tragedy.
take seriously.
So that's why we must have a screen. It must be done.
Speaking along those lines, what is sudden cardiac arrest?
Correct. So this is a video on sudden cardiac arrest. So the title is normal electrical flow versus electrical chaos. And that's electrical chaos really describes sudden cardiac arrest very well. As I said, it was a pure electrical problem. And what you can see is that this is the normal sequence of the heart, and now suddenly the electricity becomes completely haywire. And these are very rapid electrical signals, and you can see that the heart is quivering. That's the EKG on top, and it's really all over the place. There's nothing on the EKG because the electricity is completely disorganized. And after about 5 to 10 minutes, the heart will stop. So here's the comparison. That's normal. That's the heart pumping. That's normal electrical, the EKG, and the heart is beating in sequence. And here's the heart with abnormal electrical signals. And now in about 7 to 10 minutes, the heart stops. So the brain gets no blood.
What kind of condition are you looking for in the cardiac arrest? What can show us?
Now this is the video on hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which we call HCM. This is probably the commonest of the 5 or 6 conditions that we are actually screening for. And what happens here is it's a genetic condition. So here's the normal heart, and the thickness of the wall is about 1 centimeter. But in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the word hypertrophic means thickening, and cardiomyopathy means an abnormal muscle. So the muscles become very, very thick. The heart doesn't beat well. It doesn't pump well. It doesn't relax well. But most importantly, it has the potential for sudden cardiac arrest. It's low, but it definitely is there. And the symptoms typically are the patient could be breathless. They could have palpitations or a fluttering of the heart, but most importantly, fainting. These symptoms typically occur mostly with exercise. It could be during an athletic event, but it may not be an athletic event, right? So exercise is the biggest trigger, but it can occur at rest. And this is something that I ask teenagers who come to my office specifically. Fainting spells, near fainting spells, either during exercise or after exercise. Symptoms of fluttering in the chest, something like palpitations that we call, some weird heartbeat, there's something wrong with the rhythm of your heart with exercise or immediately after exercise. Chest discomfort that is out of the ordinary, being extremely breathless, being extremely short of breath, much more than your colleagues, who are with you on the basketball court or on the football field. Being extremely fatigued, out of the ordinary, more than what your colleagues would be, playing the same amount of sports, doing the same thing. So exercise-related symptoms, and the questionnaire focuses on this and is very, very specific about it. There are couple of other symptoms. One is to pass out suddenly during a startle. For instance, if the bell rang suddenly and someone collapsed, that person needs to be checked very carefully. That is a very, very specific sign of one particular condition. A driving accident or any form of driving accident. For instance, you could be in a jet ski, and if you had an accident and you really didn't know what really happened and you may have passed out, or if you had a drowning accident, if someone's a good swimmer and they drown, that's very odd, right? Passing out while diving, that's another very specific thing. So there are very, very specific questions. They are in the questionnaire, and if someone has that, that's when we need to focus on those individuals. So those are the symptoms that these conditions produce.
That's a very scary thought, thinking that you could just be going for a jog and then you don't know where you are.
But I don't want to frighten anyone. You would have often read that an athlete was playing basketball or football and then they collapsed. If you look at I've always looked at these newspaper reports, and they always say that the person was absolutely fine and had absolutely no symptoms before this. This came out of the blue. I beg to differ. There are always warning signs that we kind of tend to ignore. We kind of tend to blow them off. I have chest pain almost every day. That doesn't mean I'm having a heart attack. I kind of ignore it too. You can't be having a heart attack every day. So we tend to do those things. We tend to we either tend to forget, we tend to, rationalize. And the other important thing is not everyone develops that, and these can be picked up, and that's why it's important to have the heart screen. We can pick these up. A big percentage, a big chunk of people, of individuals, can be picked up with just very simple methods.
Speaking about the questionnaire, can you describe more about it?
Well, there are two parts to the questionnaire. The first part is your personal history, and as I said, symptoms during exercise like fainting, chest pain, breathing trouble, or fluttering in the chest, and then the driving accident or the startle with the sound. So that's the personal part. The second part is the family questions, because we are talking about genetic and inherited conditions. Now, what I really want to emphasize is, I think this is probably the most important thing. I think the most important reason why I'm sitting here today and why I wanted to come was to explain how important it is to take this questionnaire seriously. As I said, these symptoms can be vague. These symptoms can be misinterpreted. They can be, we tend to blow these off. I blow off symptoms myself. I mean, physicians are equally, responsible for this. And we tend to forget. So I want everyone, including their parents and the family members, to read through the questions, think through it. You don't have to answer it the same day. Come back to it the next day, because you tend to remember. But reading the questions carefully and answering them and making sure that you haven't forgotten anything, that would really help the medical team to pick up the students who really have a problem.
Can you give us any real-life examples without mentioning
Sure.
any names, of course?
Yeah, there was a teenager about 3 years back who was in college. He's about 20 years old. He had just started college, and he was sitting with his friends, and he passed out in front of them. And he just kept passing out and coming back and passing out. And so his friends picked him up and took him to the hospital. Then he was transferred to another hospital. Finally, about a month later, after a lot of testing, he came to me. And so when I asked him, what exactly happened, he described everything, this is what was happening. And I asked him, have you ever had this before? He said, no, this is the very first time I've ever had it. Anyway, so I made the diagnosis. He actually had HCM, the condition, the video that we showed. And when he came back for the second visit, when we were going to decide on what kind of treatments we're going to talk about, he said, I did remember when I was in 9th grade, there was an episode where I was playing basketball and I felt extremely dizzy and I felt very strange. I didn't tell anyone anything. I just went to the side and I sat down and I let it pass. And when I went home, I remembered. So the fact that I was questioning him repeatedly about exercise symptoms and going over the very same questions in the questionnaire, it made him go back and think. And that's exactly what I want everyone to do. I want everyone to read it, think through it. But here's the most important part. So he gets treated. He's doing fine. He sees me every year, no problems. I asked him to enroll. I asked him to join a research project. I wanted him to volunteer in a research project. And the research project required answering a questionnaire. The first question in that questionnaire was, have you ever passed out? Guess what this student marked? He marked no. He had come originally because he had passed out. His friends were so worried, they took him there. He remembered another incident in 9th grade playing basketball. Yet, 3 years later, in a research study with a questionnaire very similar to the questionnaire we have here, he marks no to, did you ever pass out? And that's what I mean, is we forget. We take things casually. I would implore everyone not to take this casually. If you have had the slightest problem, whatever you remember, write it down. It'll be only to your benefit.
Yeah, this sounds like this is definitely something that teens need to take seriously, because it's no joking matter at all.
Yes.
Now, you already said that heart attacks and cardiac arrest are completely different. Do they have any relation at all? Is that
They
any
do.
way?
They do. So here's what a heart. So to put it very simply, the heart needs blood, and it has its own arteries that get it blood. So that's where the oxygen, that's where the food and the nutrients and the glucose comes to the heart, right? When that artery gets blocked suddenly, the muscle beyond that artery, which is waiting for the blood, doesn't get the blood. So that muscle eventually dies. That's a heart attack. So that's a plumbing issue. It's as if this room had, there are water pipes here, right? One of the water pipe has a block. So there's no water in the tap. So that's a plumbing problem. If that bulb there starts flickering and it starts going haywire and there's a short circuit, that's a cardiac arrest. One is a plumbing problem, the other is a electrical problem. Now, a heart attack may lead to that electrical problem, but they are not exactly the same thing. A heart attack may lead to a cardiac arrest, but they are actually two different things. One is a plumbing problem, and the other is a pure electrical problem.
So heart attacks can lead to cardiac arrest in the future?
But that is not, the chance that a teenager has this is extremely remote. This question would be relevant. Say if you were, there's a 26K marathon in Detroit in fall. If you were 35 or 40 or 45, that would be a relevant question. That would be a relevant thing. And I would screen you differently. I would ask you different questions. But if you were a teenager, if there was a teenager coming to me, I'm going for this marathon, I'm 20 years old, the kind of questions I would ask would not really pertain to the risk of a heart attack. It would pertain to these genetic conditions. And then I would never ask you, did you have anyone in your family at the age of 60 or 70 have a heart attack? It's pertinent for the marathon runner at age 40, but it's not pertinent for a screen or a mass screen in a teenager. So that's it. You have to tailor it differently. Both are screening, both are heart screens, but the individuals in the population that you are focused on, they're completely different, and their risks are different.
So when the questionnaire does come to Marysville this summer, what are we to expect on the 12th of August? Well,
here's what's going to happen. We're actually still in the process of deciding how exactly it's going to work, and that's what we're going to do afterwards. But there are basically two parts. The first part is the questionnaire. You will get it beforehand. You should read it at home. You should kind of sit on it and mull over it, preferably with your family members, because there's a family section to it also, the family history. But you must answer the questionnaire, and you bring the questionnaire with you. After that, once you get the questionnaire in, there will be a nurse who will go through the questions once again, just make sure everything is okay, and then there will be an examination. In the examination part, there will be stations. We're not sure exactly how many. There'll probably be about 6 or 7, but the important ones will be, here's what you should expect, is number one, a blood pressure check. High blood pressure is not that uncommon in teenagers. It is actually more common than the athlete who drops and becomes unconscious, far more common, and can have devastating consequences. So there will be a blood pressure check. There will be a screen for a condition called Marfan's, because that increases certain risks. We will feel your arm pulse and your groin pulse. So you have to dress appropriately for that. And I will be listening to the heart with the stethoscope to look for certain abnormal sounds. So that's what you should expect, and it's very important that you dress appropriately. You will have to change into a gown, and obviously the groin exam and everything will be done. Everything will be done there. And if we find something out of the ordinary, we will do an EKG at that point, or we may recommend something else. But the basic scheme is, you get the questionnaire which you've already answered, you go over it again with the nurse, and then you have the examination part, and there'll be different stations in different rooms.
So after we do all this and you guys find out all this information about the athlete, will you send this information to the family physicians?
We've been talking about how we should do it. You will definitely, you and your family and your parents, all the parents will get the report. And we would recommend that you take that report to your family physician or your pediatrician so they know exactly what happened. So I think that would be the best way of doing it.
This sounds like an amazing program that you are going to be starting, and we're very fortunate that you're willing to bring it to our city. Thank you for joining us,
Thank you.
Dr. Christian.
Thank you, Logan.
Please join us after this message when we will meet with Ms. Stephanie Denarden from the McLaren Port Huron Foundation Marysville Community Health Team.
There are lots of unmet needs out here, and while I can't change everything, I can change some things. So I stepped up and became an American Legion Auxiliary Volunteer. For nearly 100 years, they've been helping our veterans, military, and their families here and abroad. Military deployment can be tough on a family, so we do what we can to help. And every injured and homeless veteran deserves the compassion we can give them.
Well, we are here to help.
Plus, we also have programs to teach our youth how to be good citizens and young women how to be leaders at ALA Girls State.
America.
I wanted to give back like the other 800,000 American Legion Auxiliary volunteers. There's history here. Patriotism, pride, open arms. It doesn't take much time to make a difference. Will you join me and please step up to help our country's heroes and their families? Call the number to volunteer today.
Welcome back to Student Connections. We've been talking about the importance of heart screenings. Now, Stephanie Denarden will be joining us with more details. Thank you for coming in, Ms. Denarden.
Thank you for having me.
Why did the McLaren Port Huron Foundation Marysville Community Health Team want to bring this event to our community?
The vision of our health team is to provide great relationships in our community and make it a healthy place for people to be able to come to. The one thing with our health team is we want to support our youth, and this is a great opportunity to provide them with a heart screening that will eventually show them potential life-threatening conditions with their heart and help them with their future.
What age groups would you say should attend this screening? Just teens or youth too?
Right now we're focusing on grades 11 and 12. This is for anyone not only that plays sports, but anyone that exercises, does any vigorous activity. It's open to anyone that feels the need to come in and have their heart screened.
So a lot of parents might not understand what the screening is totally about. Could you give us a little bit more of an insight on that?
The information will be provided on the Port Huron McLaren website. You'll see that at the bottom of the screen. This will provide a lot of information as far as what you should wear, what you need to bring with you, and it also will tell you that the parent does need to be there throughout the whole process of the heart screening.
If I want to attend the screening, is there any pre-registering that I need to do?
Yes, you will call the Health Access line at McLaren, and the phone number is 810-989-3199.
What are some of the other events or activities the health team has been involved with lately?
We have one coming up actually in May with the bike rodeo. We partner with the police and fire department, and then we're doing a women's event in the fall. So be on the lookout for all those being posted on the McLaren website.
I know the bike rodeo is a big event for a lot of the younger kids in Marysville. Thanks for coming in to share information about the upcoming heart screenings. Thank you for coming in once again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching Student Connections. Be sure to tune in next week for more activities happening around Marysville and the Blue Water area.